Robert Greene. The name itself is basically synonymous with power, right? He's one of the best-selling authors in history on strategy, seduction, and, well, the unwritten rules of how we all interact. His books are legendary. Kind of like a modern Machiavelli for, the boardroom, the gym, pretty much everywhere. But this isn't just a story about the laws he wrote about. It's about the one law he was forced to live.
And those are his words, spoken after one single, totally random event just changed everything for him. An event that made him face the very idea of control he'd spent his entire life studying.
So that's the big question we're diving into here. And to really get his answer, we first have to understand how he even came to define power in the first place. And that whole story, it doesn't start with strength. It starts with him feeling profoundly weak.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, but long before he wrote the book on power, Robert Greene felt, completely powerless. He spent decades just trying to find his purpose, working this insane number of jobs, feeling totally and utterly lost.
From a really young age, he was just obsessed with what was happening behind people's polite smiles and, their social graces. He saw the world like a giant stage where everybody wore a mask, and he was dead set on figuring out the real person hiding underneath. And that perspective, it became the bedrock of his life's work.
Just look at this list. It's all over the place, right? Construction worker, tour guide, even working in a detective agency. This wasn't some grand career plan. This was a desperate search. Greene was just hungry for experience, but all that drifting, it really started to take a toll.
By the time he hit 37, he was broke, he was borrowing money from his parents, and he just felt like a total failure. He knew he had ambition, he knew he could do something important, but it just wasn't happening. This was his absolute rock bottom.
And then, just when it seemed like he was at a dead end, this one chance encounter, it changed absolutely everything. He was working another random job, this time in Italy, and he met a book packager who just asked him a simple question. Hey, you got any ideas for a book?
And suddenly it was like a dam broke. All those frustrating years, all those manipulative bosses, and the political games he'd seen people play, it all just clicked. He realized the power games are timeless. Sure, people don't wear wigs like they did in Machiavelli's court, but the raw, brutal battles for influence, they were exactly the same. The idea for the 48 laws of power was born right then and there.
Now, this is a really important distinction. For Greene, power isn't about being the president or a CEO, it's an internal feeling. He says the single most miserable human emotion is helplessness, and power is the antidote. It's that feeling that you have some say in your own destiny.
So Greene's whole philosophy is built on this idea of harsh realism versus, how we'd like the world to be. We wish appearances didn't matter, but they do. We'd like to think we've evolved past our primitive emotions, but we really haven't. We have to play the game on the field as it is, not as we wish it was.
And this quote just sums it all up perfectly. To get anywhere in this world, you have to first understand your own nature and the nature of the people around you. We're social animals, you and I, running on some very, very old software.
But here's the thing. After his books blew up, Greene started to get a little worried. He saw people focusing only on the political games, the manipulation, and they were missing the other, more important half of the whole equation, building actual, undeniable skill. So he wrote his book Mastery almost as an antidote. See, lasting power, he says, doesn't come from just playing social games. It comes from discovering what you were meant to do, then apprenticing yourself to it, focusing on learning above all else, and then finally, building real, tangible skills over thousands and thousands of hours. That is the ultimate form of power.
And this brings us full circle, right back to where we started. Greene had built this whole philosophy of power as control over yourself and your destiny, built on skill and awareness. So, what happens when all of that control is violently ripped away?
August of 2018, Robert Greene gets stung by a wasp. The sting causes a blood clot. That clot travels to his brain, and it leads to a massive stroke. It left the entire left side of his body completely paralyzed. Just think about that. The things he loved, the things that cleared his mind, hiking, swimming, gone. He, the man who literally wrote the book on control, was now physically helpless. He couldn't even tie his own shoes. But the hardest part actually came a year later, when the reality finally sank in that this was his new life, and a deep, dark depression took hold. But through all that agony, his intellectual idea of power became a gut-level reality. He learned that the ultimate power
isn't about outplaying an opponent, it's about mastering your own mind when you're suffering. He found this deep empathy for anyone who feels helpless and a profound sense of gratitude for the simple things he used to take for granted.
And in this incredible, kind of shocking reversal, he started to see his tragedy as a source of wisdom. He realized that people who haven't faced a loss like that are just walking through life asleep. They have no idea how precious and fragile all their abilities really are. In a way, his loss gave him a new kind of power, a power of perspective that most of us just don't have.
So in the end, the master of power learned his final and most important lesson, not by gaining control, but by losing it completely. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? The simple ability to walk, to type, to see a friend, these are all forms of power. The real question is, will we recognize them before we're forced to?